Welcome to everybody. Good morning to those here in SA and good evening to those the other side of the planet. Impact of AI. I've been in this business for 45 years now, and this is certainly the most exciting time that I've personally enjoyed engaging with the new tech and the users of the tech, the developers of the tech, and the strategies behind the tech. So our panel today, we've got BPO operations, Mithum, strategy. Simon, thanks so much for spending time with us. And then both from a technology point of view, we have James and Corey with us. So we'll do the introduction in a second. Just a word from our sponsors. Thanks to Corby for supporting knowledge sharing and thought leadership. And towards the end of the session today, we'll give you a little bit more information about that. Just before we kick in, just a little headlines on that. I said over this 45 years, I was around at the time when the first ACD came into being in the 70s. I think, James, you were there too.
I support them, yes.
Yeah, milestones there when we had the first IVRs kicking in, today known as irritating voice response. CTI, computer telephony integration in the 80s. Predictive dialers. James, I remember you were there too back in the early days. 2010s, chatbots, virtual assistants. 2010 to 2020, we had the natural language processing, speech analytics, predictive analytics, self-service. 2022, anybody remember what happened on the 30th of November 2022? ChatGPT reared its ugly head. And ChatGPT 4 on the 14th of March 2023. And I think that's really set in motion where we are today and the discussions around the impact of AI on our industry. Our panelists today, Simon, first off, Chief Innovation Officer of CX Innovation Institute based in Melbourne. Also, during the course of today, reference to your book, the AI-empowered customer experience. So in addition to your university degree in culture and wine, can you give us just a 30-second overview of your 30 years in this industry? We were talking before the recording started that we first met in Melbourne, I think it was 22 years ago at a conference there. So over to you for 30 seconds or a minute. Simon, you muted.
I was. Thanks, Rod. For everybody in South Africa, good morning. I'm so pleased to be here. I think the first time we met, Rod, might have had a 3 at the front rather than 20-something years ago. I think it was closer to 30-something years ago. But let's not talk about that now. I've been in and around CX for a number of decades, almost as long as Rod. And have really been in this AI space quite strongly over the last 3 years, and in particular the last 18 months as it's all just exploded. So really looking forward to engaging with my fellow panelists today.
Excellent, thanks. I was just recapping on your book this morning, Simon, and I had a moment where I looked at a comment you made in your preface. It says, dive into the world of AI and caution. There's no shallow end to this pool. Nice one. James, why don't you kick in with your little short resume? 35 years in technology. We referenced to some of it just now. I remember working with you way back in 20 plus years ago. Yeah. And now the leading design architect, don't know how you position yourselves in a AI driven omni-channel platform. James, your 30 seconds.
Okay, no, I'm looking forward to this. Thanks very much for this today, and I look forward to talking to the rest of with the guys on the panels. Yeah, I'm saying being in the industry 37 years. I've been in call centers directly for 30 years and in telecommunications 37. So I've been through from the technology to all the way through to implementations and running own call centers. So and that's where Smartz was built out of that, and that's where I've grown from there. So I've watched the evolving technologies and the disruptions that keep on coming through every couple of years, watching it come through, watch this whole cycle going through. I think AI is one of the most disruptive. So it's going to be very interesting to hear the discussions today.
Indeed. Thanks for your inputs there, James. Mithum, the rest of us around this table are somewhat theorists when it comes to contact centers, customer experience. We can sit and pontificate till the cows come home. You're at the rock face. You're running, what, 7,000, 8,000 agents as the largest BPO operator in South Africa and looming to be one of the largest in Africa. So that's at the rock face. And I'm sure you're feeling the impact and all the demands from customers on the one hand and the realities of the consumer environment. So I think you and I first met also about 20 years ago, back in the merchants days, if I remember correctly. So where are you now as Chief Services Officer at CCI?
Thanks, Rod, and thanks for the opportunity to spend some time with the panelists and the audience. Yeah, it's been a good journey over the last sort of 23 years. Spending some time in the banking environment and all in contact center, and then moved into BPO probably about 12, 13 years ago, and spent all that time in here. So you're absolutely right on the coal face. Operating in a world where demands from a client perspective has just increased threefold. 5-10 years ago, we were talking about the death of voice and everything digital. And today we're talking about everything AI and the death of voice. So it's going to be an interesting conversation over this next sort of 50 to 60 minutes.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us then. And then last but not least, Corey is sitting down there in the Western Cape. Now, Corey and I work very closely together with our sponsors, Corby. Corey, you've had, what, 20 odd years in analytics and a lot of that in speech analytics. Your view?
From our side, good morning to all the panelists and to the attendees. Yes, analytics is something that has always been a passion for me. And the rise of AI, although not new, we had machine learning in the 80s already, but the pace at which it's innovating and it's being adopted is absolutely astounding. And I look forward to hearing from the wisdom of the panelists and learning from them as well.
Great stuff. Okay, get the show on the road. Simon, I'm going to throw you right in the deep end of that pond of yours with no shallow end.
Why me? Okay.
Because I can. I think your book has had a significant impact, not only in your part of the world, but I think throughout the world. I don't, when was it released, and what motivated you to write that book? I think it's a little over a year ago. Why don't you kick us off with that?
Yeah, for sure, Rod. And thanks for asking. I think, all three people around the world that have read my book, I think it's wonderful. Actually, it came about because I was finding that I was getting the same questions over and over and over again from people. And they were some of the basics. People just didn't quite get the basics. And so I decided I'd write a white paper. And as we all know, white papers are about 5 pages long. And by the time I got to 40 pages, I figured it probably wasn't a white paper anymore. So I just took the month of June and basically just pushed out the book. So it got published on the 1st of July last year on Amazon. I think I've sold about 200 copies, and I think I've given away about 800 copies. So, my wife refers to it as my overgrown name card. And I'm right now working on version 2 because, as we all know, 7 months, 8 months in AI is a very long time. And there's whole new bits of content that need to go into that book. So the version 2 will be out in about 6 weeks.
Excellent. Since publishing your book, you've been very busy on the speaker circuit as well. I follow you on LinkedIn all over the world. What are the biggest fears about AI in contact centers? Let's just throw out a couple of those balls, and then I'm going to pass it to Mithum to comment on that.
Yeah, look, the single biggest fear that I see in speaking to live audiences, big conferences and things, is a fear, what I call FOMO, a fear of moving forward. AI looks so big, so scary, so complicated, and nobody wants to be the person in the room that puts up their hand and says, sorry, I don't really understand what these two letters mean. I don't understand what a neural network is. I just don't get it. And so everybody just kind of goes along and says, AI, but they don't really understand what's going on. So the biggest fears, that I see are this fear of moving forward. And then, of course, the fears that are driven by negative media. So things like hallucination, which these days can absolutely be controlled, but the newspapers love to pick on it. Everybody would have just seen this story that came out of Air Canada just recently. And it was the bot giving one customer a wrong answer. What a call center agent has never given a customer a wrong answer before. So I think some of these things are being blown out of proportion and causing fear. So those would be the two biggest ones that I see: fear of moving forward and kind of fear of the unknown around hallucination.
Okay, thanks for that one. Mithum, at the rock face there, in your organization, have you started deploying what we commonly call AI, or is it still wait and see? Well, what's your perspective on these things?
Yeah, 100%, Rod. And I think it's still a matter of let's wait and see in some instances. And that, on the BPO side, you're dependent on clients and clients and the approach that they want to take. And, let's call it their shift from left to right, moving from, old traditional voice and telephony only, through to where, opportunities lie from an AI perspective. But I think at the same time, there are then organizations, and completely left field to Simon, where there's the fear of missing out. So what happens is they just go and plug in something that they think is gonna solve all of their problems. Again, take it back 10 years. We've got to move from voice only. We've got to get an IVR. The IVR is the next best thing. Well, actually, it wasn't the next best thing, and now AI is the next best thing. We just got to implement it in the incorrect manner. So I think there's a combination, and I think Simon's points are absolutely bang on.
Excellent, thanks for that. James, you're sitting on the other side of the scale, developing these and implementing these technologies. One of the observations that I have, and I've debated this with of several of the analysts, is this trend to, I call it over-botterization, where there's just been this mad scurry to implement bots and so-called AI with massive kickback, and particularly consumer and customer kickback. You're developing these tools. How are you finding that in the acceptance level from operators? And
It's exactly like Mithum stated now. I'm saying we got people on the one side that want to go big bang and go straight all out, and they believe that will solve all their problems and will fix all this stuff. And you got people on the other side that are petrified about it, that don't want to move forward because they can't control it and they don't understand it. So I'm saying what Simon and Mithum was stating, it's across the industry. Nobody knows what to do. So everybody is like say some big bang, and they think they have to do it, but that's what the companies want and what they need to provide for the customer service. And our approach is we're sitting back very cautiously. We built AI into our platform for years, but it's been very controlled for certain functionality. We're watching to see where the industry is going, also from an ethics perspective, how it's going to be managed from an ethics perspective. So it's a very interesting dilemma that I think everybody's sitting with, and nobody's got a clear answer.
Well, isn't that exciting times? I mean, when
fun.
some of us look back on it, and also some of the big questions, like I remember when IVR was going to replace call center agents, and yet we have more call center agents than we've ever had before. I think one of the questions, and Simon, from a strategy point of view, do you see a decline in headcount as a consequence of AI?
Do you want the nice answer or the real answer?
The real answer
is yes, absolutely. There will be a decline in jobs as the result of AI. There's no point dancing around that, pretending like it won't happen. But this is not the first time this has happened, right? When computers came in, typing pools ceased to exist. When spreadsheets came in, all of those people that worked for accountants weren't needed anymore. It goes right back to when the steam engine was first invented. People who took care of the horses weren't needed anymore because now they had a steam engine on the farm. So, you know, this isn't new. The thing that everybody seems fascinated about is, you know, oh, job loss, but they haven't thought about job creation. So when digital marketing first burst onto the scene probably 10 years ago, it was going to be the death of every marketing department. And then we saw all these new roles created that we'd never heard of before. SEO specialists, SEM specialists, all this sort of stuff. And the same is happening with AI. Right now, prompt engineer is a job that you wouldn't have heard of 3 years ago. And they're earning about $500,000 US right now for a decent prompt engineer. Now, granted, in 2 years, that job's probably going to be gone, but AI is creating new roles as much as it's displacing roles. The interesting thing for me in all of this is, does it have to replace roles? So one of the problems, and I know from having worked in a BPO, one of the problems for many BPOs is it's staff attrition, right? It has a lot of turnover in this industry. So what if we took the savings that we made and instead of downsizing the people, moved everybody to a 9-day fortnight, but they still got paid as a 10-day fortnight? Ethically a great thing to do. And what would happen to your attrition number? It'd go through the floor because now you'd be a really appealing employer because people only had to work 9 days a fortnight, not 10, things like that. So I don't think we've seen the shakeout of it yet, but I think it's going to be interesting to watch.
Fascinating. Mithum, from your side, I mean, as we know in the BPO space, not only BPO and captives as well, that attrition is a major headache. And your business unit that you run, where you're looking at optimization, how do you see AI in the recruitment, induction, staff management, and your particular forte in life is workforce management? How do you see that panning out in the next few years?
Yeah, so Rod, AI, everybody just thinks, well, let's just plug in some form of AI front end bot and it's gonna again solve all our problems. I think you got to bring in 3 components. You got to bring in the computing power, the data elements, the associated analytics, and that combined gives you an AI output that's sufficient. So I always start, to your point on optimization, let's understand what the problem statements are. So let's understand where the impact in the process and where's the influence in that particular process. So let's take the workforce planning side that drives the cycle from a recruitment perspective, that drives performance, that drives customer experience ultimately. Today you sit with, over and above the attrition that Simon refers to, you sit with absence numbers anywhere between 4 and 15%, depending on where you are in the industry. And I'm not specifically about my organization, I'm talking about the industry. So if you take 15%, what's driving that 15%? Is it based on certain individuals that were just incorrectly recruited? So a simple example is somebody's off every Wednesday. The reason behind that could be that they're off every Wednesday because there's no daycare from the area that they come on a Wednesday, as an example. Now, all of a sudden, that piece of information linked with something else, which is linked with something else, which drives generative AI, and that's what's generative AI, is creating the next new thing. Now all of a sudden says, actually, hold on a Wednesday, you need to shift your scheduling process, because recruit that 24-year-old that's a single mom or a single dad and only schedule them from a Thursday through to a Wednesday, to a Tuesday. All of a sudden, you've removed the Wednesday from their schedules without changing anything majorly different or doing anything majorly different. So all of a sudden, your data components and the deep data pieces through machine learning has now all of a sudden changed the recruitment process, because now you will not recruit the 24-year-old that's single for a Wednesday. You'll recruit them for a different part of the week, but not for a Wednesday, as an example, or from that particular geographical area.
Right. If we bounce that ball back to you, James, I know from the outset you've been somewhat focused on recruitment, the staffing element, the human element in contact centers. And from what I've seen, you've spent a lot of time developing processes, methodologies using AI in that space. What has been your experience of using the tools, the modern tech, to curb attrition and or drive performance?
I'm saying it's like Mithum is saying, a big thing people didn't take in consideration before was the employee experience. So everybody's driving customer experience. Now lately, everything's coming, it's been employee experience. When we started out, I'm saying Mithum will understand, I also ran a lot of operations for a while, or for 12 years, and that's why I've got no hair anymore. I'm glad he's still got it. But so the thing is, it's managing that staff and trying to stop that nutrition. It's understanding what are their trigger points, what are the satisfaction points, and it's across different components. It's across genders, age, all those type of things. So that's where the data becomes relevant. That's where AI, I believe, is going to be really great from that side, to understand what type of staff fitting, what type of environments can handle what type of stress, can handle what type of calls. Those, I believe, is where the AI is going to be great for that. And that's where I believe it'll change nutrition rate in call centers around putting people in a position that they actually are fitted for. So that's where it's great getting all the data points now to get that. So I believe that's going to be the next critical part from the employee experience that's going to change the industry.
I think that's good input there. Thanks for that one, James. Corey, I'm going to bring you in now, because in the work that you've been doing over the last 10 or 12 years using speech analytics, this is Big Brother is watching, let's face it, across 100% of all calls. What's been your experience in performance management and or compliance management using technology and sort of AI-enhanced speech analytics?
Right, a great question. I think you've got to change the messaging in terms of Big Brother watching, rather than finding opportunities to coach, guide, and improve the agents from an agent experience perspective. You know, you've mentioned compliance, but if you're in a sales environment and you do sales that are non-compliant, you can't get commission as the agent. But if you can identify and work with the agents, say we're monitoring the calls to look for areas where you might be struggling, where we can improve. Based on that improvement, it's going to improve your performance. Based on performance improvement, it's going to improve your revenue generating capacity. That's the first aspect from a framing perspective. From an AI perspective, you know, and Simon touched on it as well, there's a lot of hype being made that AI is going to be the silver bullet. On its own, it doesn't do anything. It still has to be taught. You know, there's some great innovations, if I look at what Smartz and the teams are doing in using AI to introduce efficiencies in the platforms, and Callbee is no different. We're looking at how can we use AI to make the Callbee experience easier, to make the query building experience easier. So we're looking at it from a pragmatic perspective to say, how do we improve productivity, rather than, you know, this little magic button that's going to solve all of your problems.
Okay, good stuff.
Can I build on that, Rod?
Yeah, please, Simon.
You know, James touched on it really well with the whole employee experience thing, and Corey on that too. It's AI could actually become the big differentiator for employee engagement. So, you know, imagine you had, and I've read about this in the book, imagine you had an AI tool that listened to every call and flagged calls with a high emotive load. You know, somebody who, and these calls happen, you know, somebody who's calling up about their pension payment or something, and if they don't get it, they're going to jump off a bridge. We get those types of calls in contact centers. You know, just to be able to have a tool that says, hey, that was a pretty heavy load. Do you need a break? Or ping the team leader and say, Rod's just had a really heavy call, you know, and we're already seeing companies doing this using older tech. But AI is just, generative AI in particular, is just going to make that come to the forefront even faster. And I think in a few years, won't even be a few years, you'll have employees applying for roles, and one of the questions they're going to ask in the interview is, do you guys use AI? Will I have an AI co-pilot that's going to help me? Because if not, I don't want to work here.
Interesting perspective. Thanks on that one. Next ball I'm going to throw at Mithum, and there comes a question coming from Hilario, and it says, what's the incentive for BPOs to aggressively adopt AI or automation? when this might be eating into the BPO's lunch. As a hardcore BPO operator, the high volumes, thin margins, how do you address the use of AI whilst protecting the commercial interests of a BPO?
Yeah, brilliant. And we can trust Hilario to ask us the tough questions. Yeah. No, so I think it's a good question, and I think there's a constant debate at the moment in the industry. Now there's a choice that can be made here. You want to have a codec moment, well then continue doing what you're doing, because you'll have a codec moment. Start embracing it, I think is the message. Start embracing it. Now, what's the incentive? Because they're gonna eat your lunch. I think the incentive is relationship, because there are going to be elements from a complexity perspective that AI is just not going to be able to fulfill on. And, things like, as an example, the Air Canada example, could it have just been, or the example that Simon's just used around an emotional piece, right? No AI is gonna drive that particular piece for you. So embrace it to support you with the elements that it needs while you build a strong relationship with your clients from a BPO perspective, that they go, there's value add coming from that BPO partner. I want to operate with them. Let me not utilize them as a transactional partner and a cookie cutter partner. Let me use them for value added services. And all of a sudden, you've now pushed up your rate because you are producing value and you're providing value to those particular customers or clients.
Yeah, very good point on that one. Simon,
can I be a tad controversial here, Rob?
Yeah, the more controversial, the better, Simon. Go for it.
I hate to say it, but I think Hilario is asking the wrong question. Because what this question indicates, and I get it, I'm not picking on Hilario, I get it all the time. I work with a number of boards of global BPOs, and that question of why would we adopt this if it's going to eat into the work that we do, right? And what they're trying to do is they're trying to lay a new technology onto an existing business model. And the problem with generative AI is you can't do that. It's not, I heard somebody say the other day, oh, well, AI is shuffling the deck of cards for the BPOs. It's not shuffling the cards. It's taking the cards away and giving them a Rubik's Cube. It's a completely different business model. So the old, cost per call, cost per seat, bums on seats, blah, 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 that model won't work in a truly AI-driven world. BPOs are going to have to shift their thinking away from just efficiency gains. Yes, it will do some great efficiency gains for them, but they're going to have to shift their thinking to how does AI derive an entirely new product suite that we can take to market? And the ones that do that early are really going to win, and the ones that do it late are going to struggle.
You're saying we can take to market that's wearing a BPO hat?
Correct. So if a BPO partners with an AI company, an AI supplier, whoever their suppliers are, and they might go to, say, Nike and say, look, we know that you're struggling to build out your generative AI stuff. We will build it for you and we will operate it at 2 cents per click, blah, 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 blah. And it's a whole new revenue stream, a whole new business model, other than how do we apply it to what we do today and try to make it better. It's not that type of technology. It truly is an innovative type of technology that transforms businesses.
Yeah, but I think so just on that point, sorry, James, and sorry, Rod, but I think just on that point, your starting point's got to be right. And the starting point specifically is whether you are set up from a foundational point of view correctly. Because if your processes are bad, well, you're going to find yourself just dropping a bot on top to, I think what James was saying earlier, just drop a bot on top and think it's going to solve the problem. It's not.
If I can just, Rod, can I just jump in there as well?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, James, your perspective, because you're engaged with both captives and BPOs.
Yeah, and I think this is a dual-pronged strategy. With the BPO, I'm saying using the AI can assist in, I'm saying like we're talking about the co-pilots, agent assist. So they can go down that strategy and work on that to be able to get the agent assist platforms in place to increase average handle times, first call resolution, all of that better experience for the customer. It also takes the stress off the agent. So that can be one parallel, one stream they can be following. The other stream can be looking at the generative AI, how are you going down that side? But the biggest problem with getting all that is getting your data and getting that data sources. And that's where I'm saying companies like Colby, I don't think they realize how much data they can provide for the generative AIs. So there's a model that you run both. I believe the strategies are critical on both sides. And as the industry starts maturing, I think it's going to give more direction to BPOs and companies to say, okay, fine, how are we going to go with the generative AI? I'm going to follow that, because you need it in now to sit and be able to increase productivity. That you have to do, you've got no choice. But then going down the other one, you can watch that and move that as a parallel strategy. So but getting the data to me is the biggest issue. And how do you secure that data and keep it secure? That's for me I see the challenges.
I'm going to come back to data security just now, but Corey, can I throw that one at you? Because I think James has opened up a line of discussion now. Purely coming out of the voice and text environment, you've been sitting on data analytics for 20 years. And what are you seeing now in coming out of, you've got what, 130, 140 deployments at the moment. How do you see that data flow into usable insights and analytics?
Rod, so now you're touching on a button that I might be able to chat with us in hours, but let's keep it short.
No, you got 5 minutes.
So historically, predictive analytics was always done on transactional data because that was the only data that was visible to an organization. So let's use an example. You're a bank. You're modeling which clients are at risk of leaving. So you're looking at their transactional data. So in other words, how many transactions are going through, let's say, the checking account, the average value of those transactions, the type of transactions, home loan payment, insurance, and that type of thing. And those predictive models were then looking at if the frequency of transactions start decreasing, it might be an early warning from a churn perspective. What was always missing was the infusion point, which was I phoned the contact center to complain about the service and then to threaten that I'm going to leave. That data was always invisible. It was, in the industry, the buzzword for it is called dark data. To James's earlier point, with speech analytics being able to surface that data, and we're starting to see some of our clients doing that, that becomes early predictors for these churn models and any of the other analytical models that are being built downstream to go, hold on a second, this client has already indicated dissatisfaction on a call, flag that, maybe we can predict earlier before the transactional data starts showing the death of the client, that this client is at high risk. So we're starting to see this data being introduced into these analytical models as either early indicators or, to James's point, as additional data points that make the models more predictive, make them stronger in terms of their predictions.
Okay, interesting. Using that as sort of a segue into Simon, KPIs, call center KPIs. I think that's one of your hobby horses, isn't it? How do you see AI changing maybe the KPIs that we have traditionally used for 40 years in contact centers to measure productivity, performance, etc.? How do you see that changing?
Look, I think for the organizations that truly lean into AI and become almost AI first organizations, most of the modern KPIs are tantamount to useless. So my one that I've always had a problem with is AHT. I think it just drives deviant behavior. It's a great indicator, but it's a crappy KPI. And it's going to get worse, not better, with AI. Because, today, 7 out of 10 calls are those simple, where are the toilets in Heathrow Airport type calls, right? With all of them gone and AI tackling those things, what's going to be left is big, meaty, beefy calls. So AHT in an AI world actually blows out. But it becomes less important than the EQ outcome of that call. So there's going to be a lot more around what was the emotive intelligence that the agent used in that call. There'll be a lot more things around, instead of call quality, people sitting there monitoring call quality, somebody is going to be sitting there monitoring AI quality and making sure that the AI is producing the right things in the right way. So I think there's likely to be a big shakeup in, today I'm often tickled when I see a call center has 19 KPIs or, you know, a company puts out an RFP to the BPOs that lists 42 KPIs. It's like, how can all of those be key? It would be like having 42 keys to the front door of your house. Doesn't happen. 1 or 2, yes. 30 or 40, no. And I think AI is going to drive that point even harder.
Okay, picking up on that, what do you see as the top 3 or 4 KPIs that we should be focusing on, given that we assume anyway that we will have the tools, the AI tools, to surface this data?
Yeah, like I said, the quality of the AI output is probably going to be your number one, because it's going to take, you know, the vast majority of that heavy lift. The second one then would be agent EQ, and however you're going to measure that. And then rather than first call resolution, I think your third one's probably going to be what did it take to resolve as a measure? Because, you know, first call resolution means a lot of things to a lot of different people. It's really going to come down to how many interactions, how many channel shifts did I have to do, all of that, you know, call it friction, call it whatever you want. That's going to become a key critical measure too.
Mithum, from your point of view, as a high volume, high intensity BPO operation, what are your views on the top 3 or 4 KPIs currently, and how they're going to change given access to AI tools and processes?
Yeah, and I think I want to touch on what James was referring to. So, you know, let's take Net Promoter as one of the elements and outputs and outcomes. That's just a score that you get at the end of the day. Is your entire journey process end to end correct one? And let's take an example for those that are sitting in South Africa. That EQ and employee experience. So EX will drive your CX pieces. So let's take a simple example of an individual that's potentially 19, 20, 21, 22 years of age, coming out of one of the townships or locations within our environment, and they've got to use public transport. So that process potentially for them starts at 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. So this individual's mindset is 4 o'clock in the morning. I've got to drop off as a single mom or single dad. I've got to drop the kid off with the neighbor. So there's a sense of worry that starts. You then move into and you get into a public transport piece, or that's a taxi, and you get to the office by, let's call it 6:30 for a 7 o'clock start. You already on the back foot. That individual's already on the back foot. Now you get in, and the first call is an irate one. Forget the security process that you've had to come through. Where's your access card? Can I check your bag? You're now in because you're working in a PCI environment. Have you left your cell phone in the locker? You get on, and the first call is an irate client that's saying, I just want my 10,000 Rand handbag or $10,000 handbag delivered. Where the hell is it? And you now got to move that irate client and the experience you've had to turn out a customer experience piece. So a co-pilot, agent assist that could quickly assist you with what is the process that's transpiring here, or what could transpire, and what are the feedback that I can give to this client to move them really quickly from A to B. And when I say move them from A to B, you want to move them from that irate state to go reassurance on providing you with that particular handbag. Now, let's take it a step back on what Simon was referring to earlier from an EQ point of view. Well, from an EQ perspective, that bot's not going to help you. You can be as irate as you want. The experience that client's going to leave with is a bad one. Whereas the human being who still had a bad experience can quickly turn it around with the support of an AI tool or an AI bot.
Nice one. Moving away from some of the practical aspects into more strategic. Nice question come in from our good friend Mark. Basically saying, is the organization serious about moving into the AI space? What's the panel's suggestion in respect to first place to start? How do we do this? And I think, Simon, you're sitting in the strategic chair for the time being. How would you advise an organization to start the journey? knowing full well that this is a ever-changing landscape. The trick is to try and keep as many balls in the air without losing a few along the way. Simon, how would you answer that from a strategic
This is
point of
probably
view?
the question I get asked more than anything. Well, no, the second most. The most I get is AI going to become sentient? The robots are going to kill us all. But I do get this question quite a lot. Where do we start? What do we do? And I actually have a maturity model that I take senior executives and boards and things through. And I think there's two questions here in what Mark's asked. One is the organization serious about moving into AI? And that's a very big word, the serious move into AI. If they are, then I would be talking to the CEO about setting up a specialized little team, like a little innovation team of 3 or 4 or 5 people that are really AI, in tune. They really like AI. Let's get them some great training and let's let them really start to innovate, because you can't do AI on the side of your desk. It's just too big. But the second part of Mark's question is, what would the panelists suggest? My best suggestion for anybody thinking about this is start your personal AI journey before you start your corporate AI journey. So you personally, what do you know about generative AI? How are you using it? I wrote an article on LinkedIn just a couple of weeks ago called the Do-Re-Mi of generative AI, right? Those first 3 steps. And it's about using it yourself. Are you using it to write emails? Are you using it to generate bedtime stories for your kids? Are you using it to create images for things? Start that personal journey, and that will lead into an employed or a corporate journey.
Yeah. Can I maybe just add? Can I add to that? You
Go for it, Mithum.
Just on it is Mark. Let's understand if you know your customer. I think is the first thing. So do you have a clear idea of the customer experience you want to achieve? So that's the first and a starting point. Then understand that customer well. Once you've known what the experience you want, understand the customer well. Demographics, geographics, preferences, channel of choice. And I spoke to Rod a couple of weeks ago about channel of choice in depth around how this is actually going to help us. And then how do you want to serve them? How do you want to serve them? What channel do we want to serve them in? Is it a voice channel? Is it a self-service channel, etc.? Then what are the best tools that are associated to that? And that's where people like James comes in around probably providing you with the right levels of advice around actually you want that in voice. Well, that's the tool we want to utilize. And then finally, design that journey map end to end. Because once you've understood it and all the pieces that come out of it, I think you'll kind of have a starting point to get you going. And that probably is what Simon kind of refers to as a maturity model, a custom experience maturity model linked to an AI maturity model.
I think
I'm also,
Rod, so I can jump in. Mithum, what you said there, I'm saying both the cities very critical, because people, they go on a journey, but they understand what the customer wants. Also understand, I'm saying your customers, like South Africa, we have a problem. We've got 11 official languages. Generative AI in 11 official languages is very difficult. So how do we handle those type of models? So I'm saying understanding the environment, understanding the client, and what you want to deliver is critical in it. So it is that maturity model is critical.
Okay. In fact, I should have mentioned it at the beginning.
Can I ask a question, Rod?
Yeah, go for it, Simon.
And it's a question for James and Mithum jointly. If you're just starting out in AI, would you start out enabling something that's customer facing, or would you start out enabling something that's internal or agent facing, and why?
Okay.
It's a very interesting question.
Okay,
I would start off
James first.
Yeah, I'm saying I would start maybe looking at, agent facing, so the agent understand the journey, so you can sit and test it within the environment. Customer facing depends on what force you're getting from or pressure you're getting from your board to deliver on that, to be able to take away things. So also understand this stuff, there's different ways to price it. I'm saying models, looking at normal menu-driven structures and that type of thing to be able to take it out, to keep it simple while you're building a generative AI, using the agents as your test case and building your data to be able to get that better. And then once you believe you're right, I'd then push it to client. But I'm saying it's a very interesting question. But I would like it internally to be tested first, because if a customer has a bad experience, the agent knows how to handle that experience.
Okay,
Yeah.
good point. Mithum, your view?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's internal. It's internal, and something as not even maybe at the agent level. Let's first start at the manager level and the leadership level. So you want X reports produced for you on a month-to-month basis. Well, you know what? It's self-serve. Moving forward, it's self-serve. Jump in, and you want to know simple. The example you use, which is the age-old piece, right? For the last 23 years in the industry, what is my HT for the last 6 weeks? Well, fantastic. Jump in. Let's plug this thing into a generative AI piece. And you're going to go, the next follow-up question potentially is X, Y, and Z. Well, here's the next few questions for you as well, because your whole time and your talk time and your ACW time is that. So that's one. And, we talk about us being, sitting in the bottom, the tip of Africa, and we can't compete. Well, no, we can. There's certain American organizations today that are still behind on simple Power BI aspects. Simple Power BI aspects that actually can do some predictive pieces through AI, through Power BI. No, I didn't know that. Well, guess what? It's done. So for me, Simon, it's internal.
Internal. Corey, I'm going to come back to you on this one, because once again, you're working day to day with extracting data analytics out of voice and now text as well. Is that information, is that data being used to drive innovation and change at an internal level, or is it now more customer facing?
Rod, I think it's on both. And maybe just to touch on two earlier points was we spoke about KPIs, and I think speech analytics, Corby in particular, has the ability to fundamentally change how KPIs are measured away from outcomes-based average handle time style KPIs to more behavioral style KPIs. So, do the right thing consistently, you get a better result more frequently. The second aspect about the internal and external, I think from a speech analytics perspective, because AI is being used in the Corby context from an efficiency gain, there's less risk that you've got a rogue AI, and I agree with Mithum and the panelists' view around it's easier to deploy internally before you send it out into the wild, because, customers, as we've seen with social media and some of the media posts, one mistake by a chatbot and it goes viral. There's an infinite amount of risks around that, where internally you can position it, you can frame it, and the staff can then understand this is part of a pilot or part of a new experience. So for me, speech analytics absolutely being driven to drive through product decisions, decline reasons, marketing decisions, and then obviously from an agent perspective, that coaching and guiding on a more individual level, because you get that granular view of which agents are struggling with what.
Excellent. Just to wrap up on Mark's question earlier there, Simon, at the outset, I should have mentioned your book. I think you offered a free copy of your book to the best question posed during this particular session. So just before we wrap up, if you would give some thought to where you're going to award your free copy of your book. Is that PDF or hard copy, by the way? Hold that thought. Right. As you sort of coming down the home straight on this one, James, you've spent many years in developing your platforms, etc. Particularly with the advent of AI sneaking in through the back door in the world, or the aspect of data and data security. Is this not one of the big risks, one of the red flags that we see waving at us? How do we handle that? And as a platform, what is your view and philosophy around data security?
I'm saying that's the big question now, is when you're putting stuff into AI models, where does that data go to? So if you're going to build large language models, and you start building that type of thing, is you've got to understand the partner that you're working with from a quantitative AI perspective, where they're hosting that data and are they sharing across other platforms. A lot of the new tools that are coming out, new platforms are coming out, that you can build your own models and it stays within your environment. So it's got to make sure that the stuff is not being shared anywhere else. We've banned ChatGPT within our company with respect to any software development, any of this type of things that from software. Was just to throw in now, there was a hack with GitHub, and there's been code that's been embedded into GitHub guys' repositories that stuff's going to expose the internet. So now you got corrupt code getting in the internet. This is where AI is going to create a problem now, because you're going to take code from that and embed it into codes. So it's becoming a high risk, and you need to know where to go and who you're going to partner with from a, I'm saying, ethics perspective, security perspective. So that's where the big challenge is becoming from an OEM perspective, is who do we work with in that direction?
Interesting one, that. Simon, your view on data and data security in this wild world of AI?
Yeah, look, I think James hit it dead on the head. You know, you need to be looking at who's using your data, where is that data being used, and you know, what's the difference between the parametric data that the model's been trained on and the data that it's using to answer the questions, things like that. And I think this is actually going to cause a new headache a little for Mithum and his colleagues, in that I can see, you know, going forward, the procurement process is not just going to ask, are you using AI, and, you know, how are you using it? It's going to want to dig in and say, what models are you using? What's the provenance of those models? How and where is the data sitting or moving? All of this stuff, I think, you're going to start to see as questions in RFPs and things like that.
Interesting. Mithum, you'll be seeing there's a question from Jessica, specifically to you. Do you think South African BPO industry is behind the trend when it comes to AI deployment? When we look at the SA industry, I mean, we've got, what, over 100 BPOs operating in South Africa, probably 100,000 agents behind it. Where do you see it? If you take off your corporate hat and put on an industry observer, analyst hat, what do you see?
So I think there's organizations. So no, the answer is no, they're not behind. I think there's individuals at different parts of the maturity cycle or the maturity timeline that are dabbling with AI. There's others that are ahead and far ahead, and the rest have to play catch up. Those that are choosing not to go down that particular path, as I said to Hilario's question earlier, are going to have a Kodak moment very soon. So, so they've got to get on the bus, but just get on the bus for the right reason again, not just get on the bus for the sake of, based on some of the first 2 or 3 questions that started. But no, Jessica, to answer the question, I don't think South Africa is behind.
Okay, excellent.
And Rod, can I build on that? I think
Please
that's
do.
true. I think that's true across the globe. I don't think South Africa is any further behind than Australia is behind, or the US is behind, or any of those. When you talk about AI, and people don't like the topic, but when you talk about AI, it's kind of like teenage romance is a nice word for it. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody thinks everybody else is doing it. Actually, very few are doing it, and those that are doing it are probably doing it wrong and without protection. But it's not
Nice
this
analogy.
whole, and anybody feel free to use that. It's not that everybody is charging ahead and big groups are being left behind. Not yet.
I can also get on there as well. I'm saying, just close off, is that, and I agree with, I'm saying what Simon is saying, is that everybody's talking about it. If you read what's in the press, the whole thing, hype is there. And I'm saying we got operations South Africa, US, and that as well. So it's looking in the US, South Africa is not behind. Let's just get that one. South Africa, I think, leads in a lot of areas because we're more progressive and to change. But everybody at the moment now is just sitting, waiting. They're talking, a lot of hype in the industry, but people are sitting back and watching. I think people are taking a watching game at the moment. So, and I like the idea with that analogy you just did now, Simon. I'm definitely going to use that one.
Yeah.
And we can all associate with that. So I'm in agreement. I think it's going to be interesting.
Good stuff. Okay, round the room wrap up. Corey, from your view, you're at the rock face deploying this tech and seeing the implications of it. Advice for any potential operator looking at using AI?
I think it holds massive potential. The caution is, approach it slowly. Don't jump on, and I think Simon had said it earlier, the bandwagon, do AI for the sake of AI because everyone else is doing it. Qualify the business cases, the use cases for it well, understand the benefits, and then implement slowly, pragmatically, and without trying to sort of rush in where angels fear to tread.
Nice one. Thank you. Mithum, your last words and advice.
Yeah, I think for me is similar to Corey, but I think I want to start with it at the problem statement level. Interrogate the problem statement, and understand what that problem statement is before trying to plug something on top. And yeah, I think that if you've got that in check internally, and you start playing with it, to Simon's point, yourself personally, I think you'll start solving problems through AI.
Good stuff. Last but not least, no, hang on, second last, James, your wrap up advice.
I think I agree with everybody's advice. It's get to understand what your problem statement is, understand your client and your customer, how you're going to work around that and how you want to deliver, and also internally, how you're going to deliver to your employees. But the most important thing, I like what Simon said, is go on your own personal journey. With that personal journey will help you set up your tenders and your RFPs to ask the right questions. So that, I think, those are all critical points. It's really interesting. Thank you.
Very good sense. Simon is our international visitor guest and advisor. Your views, your opinion, your advice. And I think also just come back to your book. I'm going to give the book a bit of a punt here, and you've got to give away a free copy. How would you wrap up as advice to broader industry, BPOs and captives, on the next step, first new steps in the journey?
Yeah, look, James and Mithum stole my thunder. No, it is start your personal journey, and don't put it off for 6 months suffering from Meno's paradox. I don't know if you've heard of Meno. Back in the time of Socrates, Meno was around, and Meno said to Socrates, "I'm sure that I could find out everything I ever need to know if I just asked you the right question. The problem is, I don't know enough to know what the right question is." And that's how a lot of people feel about AI, right? They don't know what they don't know. So start finding out, start reading, start watching, start following the right people on LinkedIn, try different prompts, get in there, play with these things and find out what their capabilities are. And then to Mithum's point, once you have that customer journey, you'll understand more how AI can assist.
Excellent. And Simon, have you made a decision on the book award?
I have. I'm going to send a book to Gerald. He asked a question that unfortunately we didn't get to answer, but it was a great question about understanding what it takes and where are we in terms of ethical and responsible use of AI in both BPOs and captives. I think that's a great question. So he definitely gets a signed printed copy. But I do want to offer that if anybody wants to follow me on or connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a message, I'm happy to drop you a PDF version of it.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I think our audience will be grateful. And gentlemen around the room, I think next panel we better have a few extra ladies, or a lady or two to be inclusive. But I think it's been a fascinating discussion. Around the room, Corey, thanks so much for your inputs, very valuable from a practical point of view. James, always great pleasure having your inputs. And Mithum, your insights from the rock face of operations are hugely valuable. And of course, Simon, thanks so much for, it's late in the evening for you now. I think it's around about beer o'clock in your side of the planet. So thanks so much for joining us and for your inputs. And as I say, that's a wrap. So thank you everybody for attending. There is a recording of this available. I'll be doing some editing on it during the course of the day. Upload that to YouTube, make it freely available, share it with your colleagues and friends. And if there are any other specific questions, or if you'd like to engage with the panelists directly, please just drop me an email and I'll be happy to do those introductions. Well, just last but not least, it's thanks again to Corby Speech Analytics for allowing us and supporting these initiatives to drive knowledge sharing, thought leadership in these types of forums. Also, anybody out there who's logged in today, if you've got specific topics that you'd like explored in these forums, please let me know, and we'll certainly put a specialist and expert panel together to explore these issues. Thank you to everybody, and as they say, that's a wrap.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome day. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye now. Bye.